Okay, hello everybody. This is the Nefio Scrum for R1 for June 8th. We have 1 week until release date today. So I'm hoping that by the end of the day tomorrow, we have at least the vast majority of our use cases delivered, but let's go through and see where we are. All right. I'm going to skip the epics like we've been doing. Looks like the first thing here is, let's see, let me look at my participant list. Who's here? Do we have, okay, maybe we should wait another minute. I don't see Stephen or Tal right now. Okay, so then let's start with Wim. What is this one? This is the one. Okay, so you posted something here.
Yeah, so I try to describe what I think has to happen. My first comment that I have is that I even believe that this is service discovery because you do the same thing as what you would do in service discovery. The question is just where you execute this. I think I just wanted to clarify a little bit, and then but okay, yeah. So
it's whether it's runtime or it's config time. Also, is the distinction I make. But anyway, go on.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. I just wanted to add a bit of text there. So in essence, what I suggested was, so we have to, like you, I think, mentioned, is, so I try to basically indicate the steps that need to happen.
Yeah.
So first is we have to identify the dependency, which would be a resource in the package, as you suggested, right? Then, yeah, so the question is, how do you get to know all of them, right? So, and whether they are complete, because in theory, it can be dynamic in essence, but I'm of the opinion that if you have the package name, you probably will end up getting them all. Right, so because what you will, so my idea was to get a hint to help you in trying to find where to look for them. And if you know all the packages or the package name, because at the end of the day, for us, we schedule against clusters, and a cluster has a repo associated.
Yeah.
So if you know the name and you go through all the repos of all the clusters, you probably will find the resource, because you then know that for each of these packages, within that package, I need to find it. I need to have one of these.
Yes.
So that's the theory that I have. It's like that's the mechanism by which we will find.
Sorry, like this is kind of what I mean. This is very much in line with what I wrote up before. The resource in the package provides those coordinates, whether they're a package name or a label and a package name or something. Yeah. So that makes total sense to me. And then
step number 3 is basically then how do you convey that information, right? So there is, so I'm would propose to use, so we have an object within NF deployment, which is called config refs.
Just let me maybe make sure. NF deployment, the NF deployment you're talking about here lives in the SMF package or in the UPF packages? This one's in the SMF
so
package,
I'm talking about NF deployment because it's a generalized construct. So you have basically a flavor of this, but the implementation right now is generic, so that they all use the same, right? But what I'm talking about is the SMF NF deployment will have to reference the UPF deployments that are coming from the other packages.
Right.
So we have
deployments are, so the SMF. Okay, I'll let you finish, but I have a question. Okay.
Yeah, so the SMF deployment needs to basically indicate all the UPFs that are related to it, right?
Yes.
Okay, and so we have an object in NF deployment which is config refs, and its purpose was to reference, let's say, resources for the SMF explicitly in its deployment to ensure that he knows that they are all exist within the workload cluster, in the runtime cluster, if you will. Because otherwise, if you put labels, you have no idea whether they all exist or non-exist and stuff like that. So we created this explicit reference, which is called config refs, that indicates within the SMF deployment the resources that are needed and for it to render and to complete. So if one of these, or if some of these resources do not exist, the operator would say, I don't have all the data, I cannot continue.
Okay, so here's my question. Those object references, so are we going to create, so we can't, okay, I think I'm understanding. So what you're saying is, no, that doesn't work. Okay, okay, so this makes sense. You put them in the config refs, but they can't be UPF deployment objects directly there. Because if
correct, so that's
directly, we'll deploy UPFs on the same cluster as the SMF, which we don't want to do.
Correct. So that's the thing that I also identified is we might need a wrapper or something on which we encapsulate that thing or something like that. Because as you said, if the UPF is on the same SMF, then the question is which one is.
We need a resource that's called like SMF UPF config or something like that.
Something like that, but it's a wrapper. It would be just. It's just a wrapper of, and then you stuck the other thing inside of something like that, right? So it's of that kind, I think.
You have deployment.spec or something inside.
Yes, yeah. So that's what, but config ref is generic, right? Because it uses core object reference. You can put anything in there.
Right. So I think that one, we need to define what that wrapper looks like. And if we do that, and then we show this, and then then it becomes, it's that question we had yesterday of what's the format. So if we define that format and we say it's going to be referenced in config refs, then Anne can change the operator to read config refs, look for those, when they're all there, render it, just like you're saying. That works great. We still have to figure out how to populate those in the SMF cluster.
In the SMF cluster. So this would be part of the spec that that we are doing already today. So today we are, so NF deployment, it's actually for SMF, it will be called SMF deployment, right? Okay. And for UPF, it's UPF deployment, and for AMF, it's AMF deployment. But all of them have this config refs, let's say, reference thing that is able to identify additional resources that are needed for the operator to function.
Right. We need to populate that in the SMF's configure, in the SMF package.
During the specialization, correct. So, and that's why I was suggesting to leverage the DEMS, right? Because what you can do, so the way what we can do is, for example, what we do today, I'll explain what we do today. Okay. For without this, but you will see that the flow is the same. So when we create a package, we start with UPF deployment, but it's empty, right?
Right.
Okay. But in that, for example, we have an interface, and there is already an owner reference to the UPF deployment. So we know that there is a dependency, right?
Okay.
I can actually show it. Maybe I'll show it. It's probably easier to show live than to discuss.
Well, given the time, like this, like let's probably just pause this. So just speaking sort of project management wise, are you suggesting that you would implement this? And what sort of time frame, rather than me implementing that other cross package thing? Are you saying you could implement this in a specializer in the SMF in a specializer, or what is our strategy as far as what tasks we're going to get done and who's going to get them done?
Just
Okay. Yes. Sorry.
yeah, Liam here. This looks like something we have to think out.
Oh, it definitely is. There's so in this issue, we've talked about 4 different options I put here, and this is a 5th option, but we're trying to get the expedient option, right? So,
Yeah, I'd say
I don't wanna-
whatever we need to hack to get our one done, and then think
exactly.
about how we do this right, because this is very fundamental. I think we've already talked about this as kind of a poster one topic. You know, doing all these cross references is a real
Exactly.
tricky
Right.
thing.
There's a big problem to solve here, and what we'll end up probably doing in R2 is having 2 or 3 ways to solve to do it, right? Because the next network function that comes along is going to have a slightly different flavor of it, or some users going to have a slightly different requirement about whether it's done in config or done at runtime, and what I'm trying to get to in that sort of like get stuff done mode is that question of like, do you see this as something you could take on, Wim? Do you need help with this? I can help you with it.
I'll do
thing.
Let's wait tomorrow, because I'm testing right now. I'm still debugging this. There's a few things that I did, which probably are also, I think, relevant. And I will be in Rome next week, which is my challenge. So I'll see how much I can do. Okay. It would not be a lot of time to do this.
So what I would ask you to do first, because regardless of how we populate the package, I think the config refs thing and the wrapper thing are the piece we need to unblock the operator development. Yeah. So if we can document that or even create an API PR for that, then we can unblock that part of the project while we figure out whether you or me or somebody else implements the actual population of those wrapper resources.
Do we need a new wrapper? Why not just replicate the UPF deployment?
It would be, because if you then you'll end up with a UPF running on the SMF cluster. So you need to wrap it.
No, but then well, okay, I see, because they're watching that.
Yeah. The problem is that, and I was thinking about that. Let's say that you do, right, and you have a flag or a label to say don't deploy, but then tomorrow there is a UPF that comes along that needs to be deployed, and you'll have a problem. Secondly, I think config sync will be not so happy that you have the same resource with the same name from 2 different packages. So there's a conflict. So I think we have to do a wrapper for. It's probably not needed for R1, but it's simple to do.
We're now kicking ourselves by packing everything into the same operator, which was actually my thing at the time. So
well, I think it's
seeing some drawback on that now.
So it's one of these.
Yeah, but then I mean that's actually not the core of the problem. The problem is if you do deploy SMF and UPF on the same cluster, that if we're using it, there's no way to distinguish between the two. So
an easy way to do it without defining a new CR is just a config map with and marshal it as a string in the data field. Right? That's the simplest way.
That would be another
without requiring anything new.
True. But I think it's not that hard to create a new kind called SMF UPF deployment or SMF UPF config, and just include the UPF.
It would be not. I'll try to come up with a more generic mechanism, because we might need this again, right? So because it's very specific. So I would call it like a wrapper service or something. Wrapper. I don't know. I'll have to think about it. Yeah, it is also a bad name probably. But
I've done this kind of thing before. But okay. All right. So I think that's the next step. If you have time to do that, Wim.
Yes, I'll propose the wrapper, and I'll give you an example of the flow on how that package would look like, because we probably need also, I guess, a dependency resource of some sort.
Right. Well, I think that gets back into but like let's let's just do it this incrementally, step at a time. Unblock that.
Yeah, but
read,
right now you can
down.
offload that into the SMF operator. Then they would just say if the config ref is not there yet, then they keep on reconciling.
Yes. I'm talking
Yeah.
about the thing in the package that identifies the dependency. I'm talking about that would never go down.
Yeah, that's the piece. That's a secondary.
Okay.
Like, let's first get the. Let's get
Also,
the-
the lower level, and then we can look at the high level. Okay, yeah, fine.
Exactly. Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
I just had one comment. I think this is again going into this turf of, the specialization has to be service dependent or not, but larger discussion here. But because I always had that thing in mind, is it's like, it's like agnostic to service, or I'm not, probably that has to be clarified somewhere in the architecture as we go forward.
Yeah, I think
The
right
package
now,
makes it service dependent, by the way. So that's my view at the most short answer, because in the package you say the functions and the resources, and that makes it service specific. But which one you put, the package becomes service specific.
Yeah. No, I mean, say probably there are other more checks that you have to do, right? I mean, in terms of if you define all the set of interfaces, do you see, okay, this is UPF, it has all these interfaces, SMF, does it have all these interfaces? Why it doesn't have, if it's a particular kind of deployment? So I think a lot of other, opening a can of worms here. If we were to gather all the requirements from the actual deployment considerations, right, from an operator, all the possibilities and topologies and all that.
Yeah, but we are assuming that the package, so it goes back to the thing is that the package that is defined has the right attributes, right? That's the let's call it the assumption that we have in R1 is that we have a set of people that together build that package, and that's the package that is compliant to the service. We are
okay,
not doing,
no, I understand. Yeah. Probably you can make some assumptions. That's right. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Do we have anybody from the UI team? I did see some. I think this is actually ready to merge. I have to go look at it. I don't see anybody on the call to talk about it. So we'll move on. This one we're working towards getting to the EDE test on. Okay, I heard Steven's voice. So Steven and Tal, is Tal with you? No. Okay.
Well, yeah. So I
Tal said
talked
he
to
was
him.
not feeling well, right? So
Yeah, I talked to him 2 days
yeah,
ago.
that's right. I
Tal's
forgot.
not even here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I talked to Tal 2 days ago, and he said his part is to make sure that the ESA and Watcher Agent can talk, and then he's able to push something through. So I haven't heard the latest yet. So once he get that going, all I have to do is make sure that the NF deployed object that the NF topology generated is something he can also consume, and then that path would be integrated.
Okay. By the way, I did an initial review of the PR.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I think like looking at the example topology resource, it makes a lot of sense. And it was kind of a shallow review. I'm sorry to say, but I didn't think deeply through all the reconcile methods. But or try it, right? That's really the way I do it, is pull it out and try, but I haven't had a chance to do that. But at least I caught the first layer of little things here and there. So
yeah, I would also like to integrate that with the rest of the system just to try it out too. So I have to do that too. I mean, myself.
Yeah, I think it's okay if it runs as a separate binary. It just means we have to do it. There's a little bit of extra overhead with that. We have to do a separate build. We have to package it separately, right? So it's sort of like, which is better? Which overhead do you want to bite?
Oh, actually, very quickly, I did some tests, and I realized the holding SMF package until all UPF is probably not a good thing to do. Anyway.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we can park this if you wanted, if you have something else to go. One thing I realized is very quickly is that there's no way to control this because of what the interface does. So what it does is you match your clusters and they automatically deploy, right? So that's what the PVS does.
Yeah.
So there's no way to actually a priori knows exactly how many instances of UPF it's going to be there.
It's going to come and go. It's going to change. dynamic.
You could know if you implement the same logic as the selector, right?
Yeah. So well, even then, right? So if there's
Even
a
then,
new
it can
cluster that
change
pops
at
up
any time.
in the middle, then your SMF needs to be updated. So the logic is still a new UPF deployment get deployed, and we update the SMF. So instead of holding the SMF.
I agree. Is that you are
Yeah.
re-implementing package variant set basically? You are doing the
No,
same.
so instead of holding SMF, just keep on updating SMF. Basically, is what my point is. Yeah, you see like SMF getting reloaded all the time, but that's probably for something that isn't 3.5GC. That's probably the right way to do it. Which is, you know, oh now we have to. Well, it is a 3.5GC though. This is a scenario for 3.5GC, but still.
So what I
for
imagine,
this scenario, yeah, if you add a UPF, then the SMF get reloaded, but then it has the latest config. Basically, that's
that's sort of what I imagined was like, okay, as the this comes back to this. Okay, so as the topology, well, right, this is sort of like, are we implementing it in the topology controller or in the specialization pipeline? But basically, if the topology controller is watching and says, oh, I added a UPF, then it goes and creates a new draft of the SMF package. And it just does that by, it can just.
Yeah, so what it does is it does a new instance of UPF pops up, and then they realize that topologically this is connected to a SMF. So they update the SMF package. So that's basically what happened. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, let's we'll you know, let's keep iterating, I guess. And this is all related to the same thing.
I mean that part Tal and I can do, because I don't think we're changing the lower part of the interface anyway, the ESA part of the interface. So we can probably do that integrations ourselves very quickly.
Okay. I think maybe we should. So on this one, I think we can probably close this. I have this repo and framework now. It's not masterful. It's very crude. And it's also, the tests I'm building are not very good tests in the sense that they're a build, right? So I'm just simulating what a user would do. You have to do this end to end eventually, but they're not independent tests. So it's not like you can run test 1 and test 7. It's like you have to run them in order. And if one fails, you know, all the rest are going to fail. So it's not great, but it's something. So I have basically, I'll link directly to the, I have yet another PR out for this, but I basically have automated up through step. Which one is this? Edge clusters. This one I did. I'm working actually on step 11 now. So the last step as an automated test. Now there's going to be a 12, 13, 14 here of the different use cases of scale the UPF, scale the SMF. But if we get through 11, and of course this depends on the work Wim's doing, on the work the workload cluster team is doing on the operator. But once those packages are all ready, then, you know, we'll basically be up through, we should be able to like do it. 12 here would be make a call, right? And then 13 would be scale SMF, and 14 would be, you know, so I've automated all the way up through 10. And
I think one that's missing here is, John, it's also, you need to install the UE ransom to make the call. So
yes, that would be 12 would be like install the UE ransom, make a call kind of thing. Yes. So we can, so I'm going to keep working on that today.
Sorry, so John, regarding regarding the UE, if I remember correctly, in 3.5G, so you have to access to the 3.5G UI and do the subscription manually or something like that?
There is a way to add UE using like curl command using JSON.
Oh, nice.
So you
Okay.
don't have to.
Okay, I'm gonna need help. I have no idea how to do any of that. So what I'll do is I think we can close this issue as done, and then I'll create issues for each of the next E2E tests we need. And so we do have the free 5GC UI running. I've never tried to access it, and there's going to be some weird tunneling we have to do to make that happen because it's running on a kind cluster. I guess it's the same tunneling we do to get to the other UI. So, except that we don't have, yeah. Anyway, there's going to be a kube control forward or something. It's in the regional cluster. The regional cluster doesn't run.
You
Metal
don't
LB.
need, John, you don't need UI to
Okay.
provision a UE. So we can
Okay.
connect to the ports web UI itself and put the file there and do curl command just to push it post it into the web UI. Then
you're simulating a human as a UI in this case.
Kind of,
Okay.
yeah.
And then you
So
put
then what I'll do
JSON.
is right after the TSC call, I will write down.
My question is just like, do we need actually end-to-end test for call simulation? I mean, like, because like, it is good to have to set up Nephio fully, to put all operators, but actually executing some user playing commands, do we need to automate it? It's already kind of next level, of usage.
Maybe.
But that's how we show end to end, right? I mean, for me, this is essentially what we need to do. If you ask me, because
manually, you'd also show end to end, right? But
no, but see,
wait,
but we have not yet done the networking. We need to prove that we have connectivity through the secondary networks. We have to do all of that stuff, right? So that's why that's what Nephio for me is about. It's the fact that we can prove all of that.
Yeah, I think his question is, do we need to do it in an automated end-to-end test?
Yes.
And I think that ideally, yeah, I think that no, we don't absolutely need to, but if we can, we should, because then we know if we break something.
I guess we don't need to automate UE ransom if it has any configurations. But I think if there's dependencies between the UE ransom, like an IP address or something, that needs to be propagated into the 5G core config, then we have to have a way to hook it up and make that happen.
Yes.
Right? Well, there is just we set IP address of N3 or like I don't remember N3 interface, which is connected directly to UPF.
Okay. The N3, yeah. Okay.
All right. So let's just take those one at a time. I'm gonna break out each of the user stories we have in the slide deck for the TSC, and I'm gonna say let's create ideally an automated EDE test that covers it. But if nothing else, a script, not a
we
bash script,
already
a human
have the
script
issues, John.
to how to do it, an instruction manual how to do it. What's that?
Yeah, John, in terms of issues, I think we should already have for all those things.
Oh, okay, excellent, even better. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, then.
If there's anything interesting, yeah, we can add it. Yeah, but I think we have the end-to-end test for all the things that we discussed.
Okay.
I mean, at least the issues.
Yeah. I have some of the tests too. So Victor, I think what this is done, right? We have this now. It is integrated with Prow, or you've got a PR out right now, but basically we don't have it set up like I described in one of the comments about like plumbing Docker images all the way through, but we do have the basic test bed set up, right?
Yeah, that's right. And also I was reading the comments over there, and also it's like you can provision local sandbox environment and also integrate with an Nephio AI. So yes.
Okay. So yeah, we should probably. You have a PR though, right?
Okay.
That merge.
Yeah. Haven't merged yet, but
this one, so we can say. All right. Oh, so yeah, I asked if you could tweak this a
Oh.
little bit.
Yeah, I will respond later.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so once this merges, I'll say we can consider that one done once this merges. Let's,
Victor, one thing, did you already set up the container lab and the connectivity for the secondary interfaces between the kind clusters?
No, I guess, yeah, that's one of the pending things. Yeah, we have to start thinking about it because, yeah, the regional and edge clusters are just like provisioned by my nephew, so but we haven't think about how to connect them. I mean, usually we use them manually, like with Container Lab, but now we have to think in a more nephew way.
I think that
Right.
if we provision Container Lab in the VM, and we can provision, are there certain networks, Wim, that we're,
Yeah, so I created a tool. Because when I do test, so you are not seeing that yet, right? So for
Mhm.
every cluster, you need a dedicated prefix per network and stuff like that. So I created a controller that does that.
Oh,
So
nice.
basically, when you create a new cluster, you get all the so it basically provisions the IPAM with all the proper IPs. It creates all the VLAN indexes into the VLAN backend. I have actually built a tool, but it goes, so that's a capability to actually configure the networking as well. So basically configure the switches in between the system. Actually, someone in my team built an operator. Instead of using Container Lab, you actually can do the wiring dynamically. So we have a tool right now. I haven't really exercised it a lot at the moment, but we have a tool, because what you have to do is you have to connect the kind cluster towards the secondary interfaces.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a tool that's what Container Lab does, but we have built in an operator.
Oh, nice. So yeah, if you can provide us some pointers on that.
I can give you a pointer to that if you want to try it. I haven't really tried it a lot.
you know, my concern is like,
But
we need to be able to at least, so it's not even a stretch goal in R1 to automatically provision the transport. So I was assuming that what we would do is we would just say, we have these 5 networks and they're all pre-configured and the clusters attach them, or whatever, however many networks we need. And they can all route, you know, each, and so, and the clusters all take addresses from the same subnet or something for now. Like ideally, probably in a real world, right, you'd have each cluster would get its own VLAN and its own, and maybe we can configure
that we have that we have.
Okay.
I mean, so I have a part that does just networking without any transport stuff, right? So there's completely decoupled. I think that's, in my view, we need, because that's basically allowing you to, if you don't do that, the specializer will not work.
Okay, maybe I don't understand what transport is.
Yeah, so that,
what I'm trying to say is, it's like I just want to, should we set up, can we manually in the sandbox setup, set up Container Lab once, create these networks and the IPAM configurations and the VLAN config, the IPAM, the word I'm trying to say is the IPAM allocator configuration and the VLAN allocator configuration and be done? Or do we need some automation as each cluster is created?
So here is the problem. So you can, so here is the thing. So if we build dynamic clusters, the thing is that Container Lab doesn't know these things unless they are created. So you cannot wire it unless they exist. Okay. So there is 2 ways you can do, right? So one is you deploy your clusters and then you run Container Lab. Right?
Oh, I see. Yeah,
so
that doesn't work very well. Yeah.
Correct. So that's why I started. So I saw this a couple of weeks. I said, okay, if we start to do fully dynamic clusters, we need a way to do dynamic wiring. That's why I asked someone in the team, hey, can you can you do this?
Right.
And so he built it. I have tested it a little bit. So the way it works is basically when you have a new cluster, or actually it's because the problem is with networking, it's not just the cluster, it's actually the node inside of the cluster.
Mhm.
Because if you look to kind clusters, it's if you say a cluster, if you say I have 3 workers, you actually get 4 containers. If you do the control plane single, that's our default, you actually get 4 Docker containers.
Mhm.
Right? So you have to wire for each 4. Otherwise, if your workloads get scheduled on one of them, they will never get connectivity. So because we have this dynamic clusters, we didn't have it if we had static clusters, right? Because then you know it ahead of time. But with the dynamic cluster, the problem is that you somehow need the dynamic wiring. Otherwise, you will not. You will not. Get that.
So yeah, at least cluster to cluster wiring needs to be in place. I guess when that happens. Workload to workload is a different story, but at least cluster to cluster needs to be in place.
Yes. So now, so I think it works. That the guy, but I someone should try it out. I think Victor, I can give you. It's a public repo that it's for him private at the moment that he did it. What you have to do is that operator is a bit special, if you will, that because the way you do the wiring, you need to have access to the Docker to the Docker socket, right? So you have to have root privilege. So I said to him, okay, build it. So you have to give it a kind of access to the Docker socket. So it starts up by basically exporting it. Similar as how we do on the kind cluster. You have to expose it. So otherwise he needs access to the namespace in Linux to be able to do that wiring.
So it's using ContainerLab or it's not using ContainerLab?
See, what I did is the following. ContainerLab has a topology part, right? And that's when it has a topology, it does the wiring, right? So what I did is I have a topology that you can do, right? So, but the topology, you can make it dynamic. So every time we put a cluster, we say, here's a new link, right?
Right.
That controller actually looks at that link, sees which are the endpoints, and basically does the wire. That's what it does.
I thought ContainerLab. Does it call ContainerLab to do that? Okay.
No. So in this case, you don't need ContainerLab at all anymore. So it's gone because it actually replaces it with a dynamic. So ContainerLab is static. It makes it completely dynamic.
I thought ContainerLab was like a router, right? You could log in and you could just say, or you could log into you could run a command and it would automatically add a port or whatever, right?
See, there is 2 things in ContainerLab. ContainerLab is the router side, right? So you have routers and that you can interconnect, but you can the main thing that ContainerLab does is the virtual wiring.
Mm-hmm.
So it wires all the topology. So you basically give it a topology file, and it basically figures out where they are, and it just virtually wires.
It doesn't have like a UI you can log, like a CLI command you can run to like add and remove ports or something.
That it does not do. It's a static thing because it's for labs. So typically they deploy and destroy and stuff like that. So here, what you need, So what we
now I see why you need it. Okay, now you don't do it.
What this controller does is basically makes it dynamic. So in other words, what we have done is replaced the ContainerLab with an operator-based implementation.
I see. Okay. All right. Well, maybe if Victor can take a look at it and we can see, it feels like a lot to add right at the last minute.
Yeah,
but,
it's a lot. I know.
But otherwise, I guess our option is to say, here's the ContainerLab, like generate the topology for ContainerLab from the clusters that exist, from the from whatever exists on the node, and then run it afterward, which is kind of hacky, but we could do that, right? Like that's probably our fallback.
That's also an option. Yeah.
Okay, so then what I'll do is I'll say this. I'll say,
I would say make it the wiring, make it all or set up the networking, I would say, set up the interconnectivity.
Right.
And just to put a little bit context, this is required for like doing a free 5G multi-cluster deployment, right?
Yes.
If like the second option makes horizontal scale out by adding a cluster not really work well, right? Because like we'd have to run that tool again and each time we add a cluster.
Yes, that's the nice thing about, if we can make it work, the nice thing is that it will be completely dynamic.
Right.
That's the beauty of it.
That's exactly. I mean, it's following the same principle that we do,
Yes, it's, yeah.
for everything, right? So if we can do it, let's do it. But it's you know, we have a week.
The timing is bad. It's horrible.
Well,
Okay.
you know, it's priority, right? Like we knew about this, we just didn't you know, one step at a time. Okay. Where are we? We have 17 minutes left. Is Simon here? I saw some discussion on, wait, did we cover this one? Yeah, we talked a lot about this, right? This is the, oh no. Oh, so no, this is the, so you said you're still debugging something here?
So here is the strange thing. I decided to check in the whole thing. So I started building a PR and stuff like that. What is for me strange is that, see, the way the specialization works is, so if you look to the flow, right? So you first do the injection, right?
Uh-huh.
Then you get workload cluster. So you get the metadata, if you will, right? Okay.
Yep.
From the moment, and then at that time, when you get it, it runs the pipeline, right? So basically
Right.
the first thing happens, so all good. Then of course, you need IPs and VLANs, okay? Right. Because it's not on the pipeline, it's based on a controller, it's asynchronous, right?
Right.
What I then see, so I thought initially, what I saw is that, okay, it was hard to debug, but what I saw is that, okay, the controllers run, they do their thing, but nothing gets, there's nothing in the package somehow, or this doesn't get reflected. Yeah.
There's some timing issue there, I think. We're seeing it too. Yeah.
So what I did this morning, what I did this morning, I thought, because what is new here, John, compared to what we did in the workshop is now we have two controllers, right? We have VLAN and IPAM. So
Yes.
what I did this morning, I collapsed them. So I put, I have one specializer, I put it together. And so rather than having two independent specializers, I built a generic specializer, right? Which basically has both the IPAM and the VLAN inside, okay? So what I'm doing right now is, okay, what I did as a change is because I thought there is what could happen, of course, is that they both get a resource list independently, right?
Yes.
And they execute. So it might be that when the IP got allocated and the VLAN got allocated, the IP doesn't have the VLAN and the VLAN doesn't have the IP. So I thought they override each other, right?
Yeah, that's the concurrency issue we talked about yesterday with optimistic versus.
But then I said, okay, let's collapse the two. And so what I'm doing is I check, is there a VLAN condition or IPAM condition? If there is, and if there is both, I run both, right? But I do them in sequence, right? So I get a resource list, then I do one, then I do the second. Even with that, it's still the same. I still do the same behavior.
So, well, what I would suggest you do is, so we do definitely have we're not doing our concurrency correctly. So what I would do given our time frame. One is make sure the package variant is ready. So if you go into the approval reconciler code, you will see a little segment, and you could actually split it out into a separate function, into a library or package, and call it from there, that basically pulls out the package variant and checks that it's ready. That solved a lot of similar problems I was seeing on the approval controller. So basically you're giving that a minute to get, because we have a sequencing issue in there's a discussion of it in one of the issues, but basically because the clone and mutate operations of package variant are not atomic, they can't be because of the way the server's built, you end up with some issues. So if you wait till that's ready, all those issues will be resolved. And if you additionally combine, like you're doing, your two controllers won't conflict with each other.
Yeah.
So I think we'll be in better shape. I think that in R2, this is part of the goal for me is this collaborative configuration. And that can't happen if we can't manage the concurrency properly. So we need to solve that, but that's a deeper problem we're probably not going to solve in the next week. So I would, one, check for readiness on the package variant, and two, do what you've already done. I think you'll probably see better results.
Yeah, it eventually works, right? But it just takes long. It takes like 4 or 5 minutes before you get the full thing.
Okay. Yeah, check that readiness state and see if that improves it. It might reduce thrashing.
Yeah, because it's basically in the BI. So what is strange is actually it runs, and then what I also see is that these functions get called continuously at that same moment. So there is something, and I cannot explain. I was thinking it's because I return errors or something like that, but we don't even return an error. So
our other option here is
So
for
when-
all of our specializers. One is package variant. We have to do that. I think we have to wait till package variant's ready. But all our specializer pipeline, we could use the use the least coordination, the coordination mechanism in Kubernetes, which allows, basically it's a mutually exclusive locking mechanism mediated by the API server. So all of our specializers, rather than combining them, you could acquire a lock and wait on the lock. And if we do that, that might be sufficient to resolve all these concurrency issues in the specialized.
Can't we do the same thing using conditions?
No, the problem is
No.
that the conditions are in the package, and in order to set them, you have to write the package. And so the problem is we need the lock before that. So I tried to do something like that, Bali, in the approval, the way I initially wrote the approval controller, I have this delay function, and initially I said, I'm going to write a condition and a readiness gate immediately, and all hell broke loose. Like it's just this right now, there's a deeper concurrency issue we have to address, where ideally package variant could clone a package, do its mutations, save it without, maybe the way package variant should work is, instead of doing a clone and then mutate, it should create locally and then, and then mutate and then create with an upstream. That might be a better, but that's a bigger change. So I think that mitigating locks through it's the same thing that's used for like leader election, right? There's a coordination.
Yeah.
We already should have permissions on it. Like we should be theoretically be able to just create, I have never used it, so I don't know, but we should theoretically be able to just create a lock that locks a given package revision. And it expires after a time, so it won't, like, even if we forget to unlock it, it won't break things. But just for between our specializers, that might actually resolve it. Like I said, since package variant's not in that locking scheme, you'd have to wait for readiness on package variant and then do the locking, and all the specializers could just do those two checks right in the beginning.
Yeah, I will have a look to see whether that improves the thing. But so
Okay.
the locking, you would actually do really the lock like you do with the manager. So the really a lock in Kubernetes itself.
Yeah, why not? Yeah, they're controllers and they need to coordinate.
Now the only problem that we have is where I don't have control of the pipeline itself that Porch executes. I don't have control over that, right? So that's the only thing that is locked.
Right. So what happens is your specializer, when it decides it needs to edit a package, it gets a lock on the package and it might wait there for a while on that. If another specializer is running and has it. And then it doesn't release that lock until after Porch is done saving the package. So as it exits its reconcile method, it's already saved the package revision resources, and that's when it releases the lock. So then the next one comes in and it's not going to load it. It's going to load the fully saved version of the package. So it doesn't matter. Basically, we're putting a giant lock around all the Porch reads and saves.
Because at the moment I think for the specializer, I solve it because I run them all in the same reconciler. So I thought
that will solve it too. It's just, it doesn't solve it as we add new reconcilers.
No, sure. The only way to do it, because see, the nice thing with the condition SDK is that they are all functions. So it's very nice. So the way to add them, actually, this generic reconciler that I have, it's kind of a pipeline execute, similar to how Porch does it. And because we have this, function runtime, so I just run function, and so but okay, maybe it's a hack right now, but for now I think it's okay.
Okay, but like the approval controller will come in and do it. If I don't think we're auto approving these things, but eventually we could be, right? So I think it's fine if it's working. Let's go for it. I'm just saying that there's another mechanism we can think about in the future. But if you already got it working.
I'll see. I'll have a look at it. But what I'm trying to say is that, okay, because from the moment all the conditions are done, those guys don't do anything anymore.
Right, they're done. Yeah.
Yes, and that's why the approval controller probably will not have, let's say, interference.
Right, because it's going to wait for the readiness gate before it does.
Correct. Yeah. But okay, I'll do some more digging into it. But that's where I'm at.
The big thing is the package, check package variant readiness. That's the big thing. I think that'll probably clean up the issues a lot.
Yeah. Okay, I'll do. And then I will. I'm starting to check in the things, right? Because it's good that other people can exercise the stuff, right? So that's what I started to do.
All right, we're just about out of time. So
John, can I?
Yes.
Okay, I stepped out for a second, so I think I missed the update on the workload stuff. Yeah, we have pretty well everything up now on the OpenStack environment. So we're just playing around with it. We solved we found a way of not doing the sudo on the kept packages in the script, so we might just raise a PR on that. But we're still seeing sometimes when the management cluster comes up and the kept package apply for the management cluster, sometimes that doesn't work and you see the pods crashing. What you have to do is just destroy the kept packages and put them in again. It seems to work the second time. Could be there's just some kind of sequencing thing there. There's some sequencing there, but it always works the second time. So it's probably just something else just not up that it's relying on. But anyway, look at we can put that in as a workaround though. If this doesn't work, just run the kept packages again. So
yeah, for now let's document the workaround. I did put a comment this morning just before the call.
Yeah.
There was a mention how do I say Fiacre? How do I say their name? Well, anyway, I put a comment in. I like the idea of just doing this curl thing, but since we're not on GCE, we probably shouldn't curl the GCE in it. What we should do is split. The only GCE thing in there is grabbing the metadata. So if we just split that.
But that even works anyway in Ubuntu, so I don't see any issue with it. So we could just rename the scripts.
So which one are you saying that requests sudo? Because I also noticed that with the latest PR that got merged by John, the README, when you do the function eval for the regional, it requires sudo.
Yeah, so I fixed that in my PR that's out right now. The issue is that it runs Docker. And
Yeah.
so I add the Ubuntu user to the Docker group.
Okay.
And then that issue goes away. So I think that PR, I think that's in the PR I have out right now.
The only extra thing I did is in the GC init script, John. If you actually predefine the Docker group and give it to the Ubuntu user, it actually, you don't need the sudo anymore. That's all you got to do. And the Docker install doesn't care, it carries on. So that's what I raise a PR on that. You can have a look at it. But that it works the Ubuntu. You probably need to just try to install a GC environment just to make sure it doesn't break. But it works fine. I'll raise a PR later on tonight on that.
Okay, then I could probably remove that from mine. Okay, cool. I'll take a look at your PR.
One question. I know we have 3 minutes. So to Wim and I might have already asked this before. So how do you guys actually verify that any injected resources in cluster resources? How are you actually verifying that the in cluster resources are what you want? In the sense with the values, is there anything?
I mean, we by verifying you mean
I mean, you're applying, there's an in-cluster resource that is taken and applied, right? When you want it injected.
Yes.
So how are you verifying that the in-cluster resource is created, or how can somebody go and look into that in-cluster resource? What are the commands?
So you can look at the in-cluster resource through like kubectl, but in the actual package, the package after injection, if you go and you look in the package, you can look at the injection point resource, and it will be annotated, and it will say what the name of the in-cluster resource that was injected was. So there's an annotation
in the package
right now, but there's an annotation that says like injected resource, and it's got the name. So it actually tells you which one was injected.
Yeah, because one of the tests that we may also want to make sure that we have is the in-cluster resources are not present when the cluster comes up, the management cluster comes up, and then you have in-cluster resources being populated at a later point of time. So those are all things that we probably want to capture as well.
I think we will definitely want tests around that later, where like right now, we're kind of just trying to get the happy path test done. But you're right. We need tests of like all of this stuff should be able to happen independently and out of order, and it should all eventually be consistent. And we need tests for all of that. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're saying for the in-cluster resource, I should be able to use a kubectl and be able to. I think whenever
the workload cluster, you can actually in my EDE test, if you go look at like 002 or something, go look at those there. One of them says wait for the workload cluster resource to appear. So actually,
in the management cluster, basically. Yeah, I see.
Yeah, in the management cluster. But then there's also the check of like, really, we should be able to check that what's in the package matches what's in the cluster, like as a post, as a test. Posting. Anyway, we have to go to the PSC. All right. Thank you all.
Yep. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.